excavate
So
this
not
way.
Washington, D.C.
I don't think so.
AW.
Yeah.
Scroll.
Okay, where am I here? All right. All right, welcome everybody to the joint work session with the Planning Commission and the Oregon City Commission here. So, Katie, would you, I guess I'll do that since I get to do that once in a while. And if you'd like to call roll, please.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Hinkin,
Here.
Commissioner Guild is absent, Commissioner Espy,
Here.
Commissioner Mabey,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Here.
Commissioner Ide,
Here.
Chair Shaw, and then we also have Commissioner McGriff and Mayor Holliday that's absent this evening.
Okay, nobody on the phone tonight? Nope. Okay, well, good. Yeah, I'm here, and we will move into our discussion items. 3A, which is going to be the Willamette Falls Legacy Project Riverwalk and Phase 1 implementation, and that's going to be Ms. Tearaway.
Thank you very
Hey.
much. After years of public comment and input, we are happy to present to you an overview of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project Riverwalk as a whole, and then also discuss Phase 1. We have Brian Moore as well as Alex Gilbertson with Metro to walk you through the project. Enjoy.
Evening.
Hey. Screen pop down.
So if you'd like to introduce yourself there and where you're from and stuff there, so.
Good evening, Chair Shaw, City Commissioners, and Planning Commission. My name is Alex Gilbertson. I'm a senior planner with Metro, and I'm the project manager for the Riverwalk. And
Good evening, I'm Brian Moore. I'm the project manager for the Willamette Falls Legacy Project.
All right, great. Welcome.
all right, looks like we're all set up here. I'm going to just jump in and give you all a little refresher before we cover the design of the Riverwalk and inform you that the 4 core values that have been established as part of this project have remained very strong force in the design of the concept, those being public access, historic and cultural interpretation, healthy habitat, and economic redevelopment. And through the design, I just want you to keep those kind of in the forefront of your mind in how we've made decisions moving forward. Here we are. The blue dot shows our previous, or just most recent, community event at OMSI, which was earlier this month on June 3rd. But in order to get there, we had a lot of community engagement that took place before then. We had a kickoff meeting last fall. In the spring of 2016, we had another public event in March at the Abernathy Center. In the summer of that same year, we were at the First City Festival in downtown with a booth. And in the fall, this past November at Clackamas Community College, we also had another public event where about 500 people attended that event. And who all was at the OMSI event on June 3rd? We had, let's see, so this is a shot of one of the first of 2 presentations where we were revealing the design to the public, and we had well over 600 people attend this event at OMSI. So we were very excited about the turnout and really a lot of the positive feedback that we received from that afternoon at OMSI. 2 presentations were given at different times during the day, and these presentations focused on Michelle Delk had given an overview of the design, and I'm going to give that to you today. So if you were at the event, I apologize. It might be a little repetitive, but it can't hurt to hear it again. And then before we jump into the design, I wanted to refresh everybody about the key uses and how these programmatic elements were used in order to shape the design. Falls viewing access, paths, walkways, and biking trails, collective gathering and event spaces, habitat restoration and natural history interpretation, river access and activities, PGE dam operations, historic reuse and cultural interpretation, and honoring Native American presence, past, present, and future. Here is the existing conditions, the site as it sits today. We have divided the site into 4 different areas. On the left side of your screen is McLaughlin 99E, how it snakes up into the tunnel. Area 1 focuses on the North Riverfront. Area 2 is looking at more of the central area of the site. Area 3 is looking at the PGE Dam and Mill E, and Area 4 is focused on a connection to the Kenema neighborhood. As a reminder, the Metro does not own the site. We have an easement with the landowner to construct the Riverwalk. And here is the proposed design. Everything that you see rendered on the screen is what we're including as part of the concept design for the Riverwalk. And the bullets down on the bottom, public access, reusing structures, this is a working waterfront. We want to embrace that and acknowledge that PGE still has operations on the dam. We want to be considerate of the fluctuation of the river. We've done some hydraulic modeling with consultant CH2M to help us understand what those flooding conditions would be on the site. Habitat restoration is a very obvious component to the design, and then, of course, the redevelopment. Zooming in on 2 options, we're carrying 2 options forward in this, I guess it's the northeast or southeast corner of the site, because we don't necessarily have resolution at this point, and we wanted to carry these 2 options forward so that we have a little bit more flexibility as decisions are made, specifically around redevelopment potential and what public infrastructure would look like, specifically the turnaround at the main street, which you can kind of see on the left image. On the right image, we've terminated Main Street a little bit short and exposed the trestle, the Main Street trestle, in that as a different option or scenario moving forward. But we need to be considerate of PGE operations and their maintaining their access to the dam. What you see in the orange outline are considerations from the private landowner for potential development opportunities on the site. So we're going to take a little walk along the riverfront through the eyes of the proposed design. And so what you see on the orange line is the virtual Riverwalk tour that we're going to take today. So starting at the North Riverfront, this is the existing condition, and you'll notice the orange circles on a lot of these photos. These are little indicators to help you tie your viewpoint to these areas, because they'll remain in the similar location in the preferred design, just to give you a little point of reference. So what you see on the bottom is the bulkhead. In the middle is the corner of the pipe chase, and up on the top, the circle is the corner of the Mill O building. This is the proposed design that indicates, so you'll see those 3 circles for a point of reference. We are really looking at carving away a lot of the structure that you see where paper machine 3 and number 2 are located, peeling back those buildings to expose an old tail race and provide expanded habitat opportunity, as well as the opportunity to expose what's underneath the paper machine buildings, which is an old historic flour mill foundation. The white trails that you see are what we're calling explorer paths, and these are elevated paths above the habitat enhanced areas, which would provide opportunities for people to get out a little bit closer to the river without impacting those natural resources. But using elements like the bulkhead as a structure to tie the explorer paths to, so that we're trying to not really recreate new structure, but utilizing what we can and what is there today. This is an image of what the promenade could look like along Water Avenue, and how it would basically run up against the existing basalt habitat along the waterfront, and just trying to illustrate what that condition could look like. The next stop is the public yard area, which you see here. And please note, the orange circle on the left is the corner of Mill O again. The circle in the middle is the carpentry shop. And the circle on the right, I'm not exactly sure what that's pointing to, but just keep that in mind.
The top of the cylinder.
Oh, it's top of the cylinder. Okay. Thank you. And this is the proposed concept, which would illustrate how we are going to transform the public yard into a civic gathering plaza for downtown Oregon City. We are proposing this public yard to be cleared of a lot of those different structures, but the carpentry shop in the middle, that circle represents a re-envisioned or transformed carpentry shop into an outdoor flexible stage or pavilion. Mill O is maintained as a structure for public gathering or assembly. And we just have this large flexible plaza space with stairs that come down to the river. And the pipe chase, which you see on the bottom of the screen, has been peeled back and removed partially to allow for the alcove that you see on the bottom to be created. If we pop back to the existing photo, that pipe chase really cuts off the river's edge from the site. And historically, we have photos that show that a tail race that goes into the site, really similar to this condition that we're trying to propose today, peeling back that structure that was built in order to expose the existing basalt and enhance that habitat area.
Alex, and this is also phase one of the construction.
Partially. Okay. I'll get to phase one in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a photo standing inside that pipe chase, which was used to convey storm water. And as we move back into the preferred design here, you can see how we're peeling back the top layer in certain areas of the pipe chase to create more of this porch-like atmosphere or opportunity that connects to Mill O and is another spill-out location for public gathering spaces. And you can see the top of the pipe chase on the left side. That is where the existing floor or surface of that is today. And then peeling that back so that we have a lower level accessible for people. So the dotted line indicates where we've been, and the solid line is indicating where we're about to go. And so we've looked at the pipe chase. We'll be heading up to that cylinder, and we're going to look back at the Mill H area, which I'll show you in just a second. But this is the view that exists today, and the cylinders we're standing at the cylinder, and we're looking at the boiler chimney stacks. And this would be the view from that same location, peeling back a lot of the metal transit siding to expose the structures, to expose the boilers within, to create a public gathering space in a different form than it is today for viewing. And I'll zoom in on what that viewpoint will look like. And yes, that is a large slide on the left. We're proposing a large play tower with a slide. And we're going to swing around. We're kind of hovering over the river now, looking back at the Mill H area. You have the clarifier on the right. And this is a view that shows the connection from the public yard via the Explorer Trail, that elevated pathway that you see on the left, that would connect to these different structures and make grade. We have about a 10-foot grade change between the yard and this Mill H building, and we're proposing a series of ramps, stairs, and elevator to make this accessible in order to get to the viewing location, which you see on the top right circle, orange circle. This is the view from the existing Mill H reject building. And this would be the view in the proposed condition, showing we're really maintaining those existing beams, the structures of the buildings, but peeling back the transit siding and really exposing this to have it be in an open air condition. And here's the phasing approach that we'll be taking as part of this project. What you see on the bottom right corner is the phase 1 area, which we'll be highlighting, and I'll show you what we feel like we can accomplish within the phase 1. And then during that phase 1, there will be an interim use area which will be located in the public yard, which is outlined in the center. Everything that you see outlined in orange is a structure that would be demolished as part of phase 1. So the stock cylinder shed on the top of that cylinder, the pump station, there's recovery boilers, and the power station. The 3 buildings or structures on the left are really to be demolished in order to set ourselves up for future phases. And this would be the condition of what phase 1 would look like. The recovery boiler would be demolished to existing surface level, and so our interim condition would look something like this, where maybe there's an opportunity to provide some tables and chairs for public gathering in the interim use. But everything else that you see is considered fully envisioned or developed as part of the phase 1. So exposing the beams and the trusses of the boilers, exposing those stacks, creating a connection between there via the cylinder and elevator, and then getting to the Mill H area. The interim condition in the yard is, so everything again in orange is considered something that we're looking at demolishing as part of phase 1. So the pipe shop, the pump station, the auto shop, millwright, all of those would be removed, again, to help set us up for future phases. And this would be the condition of the interim use. So the surface level of the yard would not be something that would be considered new as part of phase 1. We would be utilizing the existing surface in the interim condition, but then reusing the carpentry shop perhaps as a gathering space or that pavilion that we would like to envision throughout the conceptual design of the Riverwalk. And what you see in the middle, the recovery boiler, that's just another view of what that would look like if we removed it down to the existing surface level. And the orange line, the diagonal line, that's just a reference point so that you can see where that alcove would be carved out in a future phase. So that orange line is showing the extent of what the final build out of the civic gathering space would be. The interim condition, of course, would be a lot larger and more expansive. This would be the view from the phase 1 overlook. You can see the falls with the sun setting, the clarifier in the foreground. This would be the view from the roof of that Mill H reject building in the corner of the site. So where that orange circle on the left is, that's where you would be standing to see that view. We have PGE Dam on the right, and we're kind of hovering over the clarifier in this photo. And this would be the proposed condition of the clarifier looking back towards that overlook. We are proposing to fill the clarifier in and create a a habitat that might be more contextual. We're filling the clarifier in to create more of a connection to some of the existing habitats that might be found in the region. And so this is showing perhaps basalt with some camas, an oak savanna type habitat inside the clarifier. And this is a photo of what the proposed dam could look like for PGE. Expanding the current footprint of it to allow more space for public access, but still allowing them to continue operations and maintenance access. Here we are hovering above the clarifier. The structure on the right is the Hawley Powerhouse Foundation. This structure would be the future overlook in a future additional phase. And what I like about what this photo conveys are the explorer paths that connect, these alternate pathways that connect from the clarifier to the future Hawley Powerhouse Foundation overlook. We don't want to be reliant upon PGE for access at all times, because they may need to close their dam for certain operations or maintenance, and we want to just make sure that we can maintain that public access. And so that's why we're providing an alternate pathway opportunity. And then this would be the view from the future overlook, looking out at the falls. And that's what I have for you today. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went through it pretty quickly, so.
Got a question. I notice you have quite a few elevated observation areas, and those are accessible by for the handicapped, people in wheelchairs and maybe walkers and things of that nature.
Yes, that is correct. All of the pathways would be ADA accessible as far as width, grade, and as well as alternate routes via elevator, for example, to get you up to those viewpoints.
And for people 80 years old, 90 years old that can make it, do you have rest areas so they can sit down and take a load off, maybe?
Yeah, I think throughout the entire Riverwalk area, there will absolutely be options to stop and sit and rest. Like, for example, at the North Riverfront, there's the explorer trails that go out to the closer to the river's edge. Those are not within the main pathway, and so those are different options for stopping and resting, prospect, viewing.
Oh, yes, Damien.
Couple things. You've got a lot of elevated viewpoints. Is there anything that's going to be like down closer to the water near the falls, as opposed to the dock that's basically all the way up at 99? Like something at the base of the Hawley Powerhouse, so that people can, be near the water and be near the falls?
So we will not be proposing any access at the base of the Hawley Powerhouse Foundation for safety reasons. We do not want to put people down below the elevation of the dam, like underneath, in case there's some catastrophic failure that happens. We just want to avoid that. And so the opportunity to get your toes in the water, so to speak, is in the yard area, and we don't necessarily have it highlighted very clearly in this image, but there would be an opportunity for an informal path that would connect from the public yard down to this alcove, so that you could access the water from that location. We have, as I had mentioned, we'd been doing some hydraulic modeling, and we can confirm that there would be water in this alcove even in the low water of like August, for example.
I just, one of the big things in Niagara Falls is to get into the spray.
Yeah.
And everything you've got puts us even almost above the spray zone unless it's windy. And so I just was wondering if there's something along those lines.
Well, the future overlook at the Holly Powerhouse Foundation is utilizing that existing structure, and so we wouldn't be up above in that location higher than where you would be today if you took a tour.
And then is there any plans along this to either access or divert away from access the existing petroglyphs that are there?
We are not proposing any changes in the river as far as creating access to those petroglyphs. I guess we haven't encouraged any access. We are aware that they are there.
Right. That's why I was wondering, or if it was to divert people away,
Right.
Because they have value as from the Native American side and everything too. And
Yeah.
so okay, so you're not going to have let's walk right
No.
by them and take a look. And,
No, we've intentionally avoided that area.
okay,
Yeah.
that's a good answer. Thank you.
A question. On the mill races that you'll be exposing, are there any concerns about water quality? Are there any contamination concerns?
So, as part of the diligence that we're doing on the site, we recently had some geotechnical drilling occur in this yard area. One reason was to figure out where the existing basalt locations are. We could only have our best guess based on historic photos, and so we just didn't know what the mapping of that looked like. So we did 70 drillings in the yard to map the basalt, and some of those samples had been taken for testing, and we discovered that there are contaminants, of course, but nothing that was alarming or would require special disposal.
Paul.
Oh, of course, yeah, you guys are going to have, lots of retail and that kind of thing, but I was just curious about Mill O, and if there was going to be anything proposed for the inside of that other than just empty space, or if it's just public gathering space, or would there be some kind of, low-level vending or concessions to kind of add to the vibrancy of the area?
At this point, that's a good question. At this point, Mill O is envisioned to be what we're calling a river theater.
Mm-hmm.
These stairs that come down to the basement level, basically of the pipe chase, which would be an opportunity for gathering. It would be an unconditioned space, so open air, where perhaps this is the location where there's maybe there is some concession, there's a restroom, some general facilities, but as far as it being a conditioned space, that's not the proposal at this point. There is the upper story of this structure would be part of maybe a private redevelopment proposal, and so that would potentially be something
It just
maybe
looks
for
like
an
a great-
office space or
Like a great opportunity for an outdoor market opportunity
Yeah.
or something like that. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Bob.
I noticed that access begins towards the middle, and there's nothing, and correct me if I'm wrong, beginning from McLaughlin south. Did you take the entire easement, and I missed it, or?
So the entire easement, so what we showed you today started at 99E and walked the whole way out to the right-hand side. And so we are utilizing the full easement.
You are.
But phase one is not. Phase one is a more defined, focused area of the site, which is looking at that corner, that Mill H corner, and then interim access in the public yard, which is in the center of the site.
How are you going to get from McLaughlin to that?
So interim access would be along Main Street, and then you'd be able to cut through the yard to get to Mill H, or you would be able to continue along Main Street as it is today and cut down along the dam.
Is there a reason for that?
Funding. We have a limited amount of funding, and we aren't able to realize the full concept at this
Okay.
point. Yeah.
And also is that the state funds require a prominent view of the falls.
Yes.
That's their requirement, and that's why we have to kind of start
Yes.
right there too.
Makes sense.
So it's a good experiment too to figure out about uncovering the race and how, you know, what the demolition of the buildings and everything. It's a good spot kind of in between.
Yeah.
Because you're going to use that knowledge all the way through the site. So.
Yeah, and the demolition that we would be doing as part of this phase would really help set us up for future development work of the site.
That demolition is within the easement?
Yes.
It is, okay.
So I'm curious about the slide. So if we could go back to that picture there.
What I did not mention is the slide would not be part of phase one.
Yeah, but we just
Big slide.
It's a fundraising opportunity.
There we go. But you know, we had a project come through for this. It was the what was it? The water park.
Park.
That with the canoes and everything that were going to come
Whitewater
through,
type
the
thing.
whitewater park, yeah. And one of the reasons that was dismissed is because of liability. And I'm kind of looking at this and I'm thinking there seems to be some liability maybe to this also. So could you kind of describe what you plan on, what you foresee anyway in that Mill H Overlook
Yeah.
activity area, looks like.
Activity area. So we're calling that a play tower, and it would really be looking at utilizing the existing structure of that building and creating a series of nets and climbing opportunities to get up, and then a slide that would get you back down. You can kind of create a circuit through there. Obviously, that play equipment would need to be safety certified and all of that, but as part of the phase one, we would be excavating that siding off of that structure, but we would not be building the play equipment into it.
Okay.
What would be the source of funding for something like that slide?
That would be a fundraising opportunity. We have a friends group on
Just wanted
charge.
to clarify for the general public. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm wondering if that activity doesn't somewhat exceed the
Mission.
mission of this whole, because like Brian said, we kind of put the stoppers on the kayak whitewater thing, and doesn't this kind of do the same thing without stating it as such? It's
Essentially, however, when we went through the public process, we engaged the community and we heard from the public that a play opportunity was something that was really exciting and people were pretty enthusiastic about. And so this is a response to that.
I'm just curious how climbing nets are a cultural and or historic interpretation of the.
Well, they aren't maybe necessarily per se, but it's a balance of those four core values. And so, yeah.
And we're looking at a couple of years and more development, and it may not be that when it's
It
done.
may not end up that way. Yeah. Okay.
So on Mill H, the play area, would those walls be enclosed in glass or would they be open air?
It would be open air.
Hence the nets to keep the kids in.
Yeah, it says this may not be the play area or the nets or whatever, but I applaud the effort to add elements like this to make it attractive and increase the vibrancy of the area.
I agree, and I, as one, take my kids out to Tigard or Tualatin to go climbing, so I know that having something local like that would be an attraction to youth.
I understand correctly that the whole, just the walls are going to go up, but the actual structure itself, the nets and the place areas, that's not part of phase one.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we doing? Everybody okay?
Yeah, I love what's going on.
I do.
Yeah.
This is great. It's something new each time I see it. So,
So I
this is
just wanted
good.
to just really quickly let you know, just looking ahead, we're proposing to submit for a land use application later this fall.
Great. Good.
I got one closing comment. Dr. John McLaughlin was instrumental in developing this whole area down there. As a matter of fact, I think, if I recall correctly, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that he platted Oregon City down in that area. But I don't see any tribute to him, just the Native Americans. And what about the pioneer aspect of it? Is there going to be any tribute to them?
So we don't have anything necessarily specifically called out. However, there's an interpretive framework plan that we are working on as part of this project that's running in parallel, where it's an opportunity to hear all of the stories, and then this framework will be used in order to decide what stories are told when and how and where.
And the woolen mill was his.
Yeah. Well, it's a tremendous opportunity to educate the public on the history of Oregon.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, people from all over the world are going to be coming to this, and if we leave somebody as significant as the pioneer effort out, we've strike three.
Have you guys thought about a heritage trail? Those are real popular back east, and actually, Lake Oswego has 2 of them. So they have the interpretive panels and a brochure that you can kind of go along a little trip, which would be perfect for the walkway, and they have the weatherproof interpretive panels that tell the story.
Okay,
And
thank
that
you.
would help for wayfinding as well too. So
Boston's
Good.
Freedom Trail.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there you go.
Yeah, and some of them have QR codes, and you can put your phone in them, and
like that. That's
they project the old images on the new and all that kind of crazy stuff. So yeah,
If I may, because of the scale and scope of this particular effort,
Right.
The project's going to be done in phases, and so those are the kinds of things that can be phased in over time. But as you saw in the exhibits, the current condition of the site is strikingly different than the proposed Riverwalk condition, and so our first phase effort is going to focus on getting the site into a condition where we can move forward with those enhancements down the road.
Yeah, I guess my last thing is I see 2 things that are either going to take decades to mature or just aren't necessarily really feasible. The grove
The trees.
of significantly mature pine, and the idea of an oak savanna in as small a space as the clarifier. I mean, that's one oak tree at the top of the hill, and it's spread across the whole.
Hear your comment.
that's okay.
I mean, I'm willing for us to make a decades-long investment. That's a good thing. But
All right. Are we are we all good with this? All right. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Alex and Brian.
Thank you.
And we'll be seeing more of you here.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
then
Thank you.
Christina comes up and tells us that they're breaking ground in a week, and it'll all be ready by the end of summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So another piece to this puzzle is figuring out how we're going to get onto and off of the site, or how accessible it will be. We have Christina Robertson-Gardner, our senior planner here, and Rick Williams to talk more about our Riverwalk parking, access, and transportation plan.
Great.
Thank you,
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw and City Commissioners, Planning Commissioners. Rick Williams and I are here to talk a little bit about the Riverwalk transportation access and parking strategy. I'll do a little bit of introduction and I'll hand it to Rick. Actually, I'll hand it to you and then you can hand it back to me. Sorry.
Actually, what's the next slide? There we go. Okay. Yeah, my name's Rick Williams, and it's nice to be here. Thank you for taking the time. And we've been working with putting together your parking and transportation demand management access plan for the Riverwalk project. We're heavily into it now. We've had several community meetings. We've got more to come. Several of you on this commission have already participated, and we really appreciate that. And so our organization today is, Christina's going to give you a little background to update you. You're probably really updated on this, just seeing the last presentation. A summary of what we've been hearing. Our group has been hearing from the community about access and parking and transportation demand management. Sort of a hint at some of the strategies that seem to be have a lot of community consensus. And then our plan approach for putting the final plan together and bringing it back in July. Then hopefully we have time. We're going to try to keep this to about 12 minutes and then have time for you to give us questions and inputs. With that, I'll turn it back over to Christina.
So we're going to time travel back to 2014. The site went to the Planning Commission, City Commission to rezone from industrial to our new Willamette Falls downtown district. To do that, we need to meet the transportation planning rule. And we also adopted ourselves as an MMA, a mixed-use multimodal area. As part of that negotiations with ODOT, 3 off-site improvements were identified as the site develops. And while there is there is a little bit of a trip cap on this site, but it's a lot of development opportunity. It's about 800,000 square feet of mixed use. As long as we stay in the long run within that formula, there are 3 triggers for these offsite improvements. The first one, A, is right at the tunnel, and that's going to be happening soon, which is a new lighting and intelligent transportation system, some advanced warning lights as you go northbound into the tunnel. Having congestion stopping in the middle of the tunnel is a big safety issue, and this is identified as one of those safety improvements. 2, prohibiting left turn lanes northbound onto the site. Once again, stopping right in front of the tunnel. And then a realignment of Railroad Avenue. Right now, when you're a pedestrian coming out of the railroad tunnel, you're about 2 feet from cars. So this allows a little bit of a pedestrian refuge and slows down and provides a little bit of a refuge lane to get into railroad. And the third one is a raised medium, or we call a pork chop, in the right in, right out at the curve in 99E. So that Water Avenue, when it's built, either through private development or through the Riverwalk, when that block is built for the Riverwalk, there'll be a new right in, right out access. The Railroad Avenue gets triggered when there's 1 trip more than the amount of trips that were there when Blue Heron closed. So that's not the first phase of the Riverwalk, and it may not be the first phase of any private development. So those are the 3 off-site improvements. There will be an infrastructure phasing plan, so how the streets will be built and interim opportunities for access. But as part of the Planning Commission and City Commission approval of the master plan, is looking at transportation demand management, which is how do we use all the other modes to get people on and off the site, and how do we think kind of inside-outside approach to make sure that we are increasing our universe of trips and opportunities for people to get to the site. So this is a picture from the Vision and Master Plan that shows economic redevelopment on Main Street. A transportation management plan is required for both the Riverwalk, but also private development when they come in. And one of our hopes in reducing or removing barriers for redevelopment is the work that Rick and his team is doing and that we'll do in the Riverwalk, provide a lot of understanding of private opportunities for transportation demand management that a private development could use in later phases. So we'll talk about the universe of options, but there may be some that won't be implemented until private development comes in. So as part of this, our goal for this, and I'll read these out, for this access, transportation, and parking plan is to reach a shared understanding of the issues involved as we go through our public outreach, to create a long-term metric-based strategy that can guide us through all the different public and private development phases, achieve Planning Commission approval of the strategy because it is a condition approval of this future land use application, and always actionable next steps, so we don't have a strategy and plan that gets put on a shelf. So I'm going to hand this back over to Rick to talk a little bit about the work that he and his team has done and some of the feedback he's received from our 2 summits.
I'm not going to let you off the hook yet.
Okay, one more. I think Alex has shown where we are today. We're moving forward in the fall with land use application for phase 1 and really looking at construction starting in the spring, summer of 2018. And so this Riverwalk strategy for the transportation demand management is looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term projects that we can take on through all the phases of the Riverwalk.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, what we're really trying to do is create a parking and transportation demand management access plan is a big word, a big phrase. And what we're trying to do is work with the community so that they feel confident that, as Christina said, we're expanding the universe of trips. A lot of times, you think about a parking plan and the only type of trips you think about are parking. But because of the constrained nature of the site and the evolution and sort of the unknown evolution of the project, we need a plan that's responsive to change as it happens. But we also need to realize that we're growing different types of access beyond what we do now. We know there's parking, but there's transit, biking, walking, pedestrians, residential growth. There's just opportunities that we're not thinking about now. And so that's what this plan is striving to do. So why do transportation demand management? And what's been nice about it is testing some of these ideas that we have with the community is it reinforces some of these key guiding principles or success measures of cities that are successful in doing transportation demand management. The first thing we know is people like options, and the changing nature of demographics in the United States is showing us that. People don't want one way to travel. They want multiple ways to travel, and it includes everything, so that they can craft their trip to their day. It also, as I said, and Christina said, the universe of trips. If we limit our focus on a single type of access, we limit the total amount of trips that we can get into an area. And so transportation demand management emphasizes that at the end of the day, we want to put more trips into the system with less adverse effects on the system. And that's what we call the universe of trips, expanding the universe of trips. As I said, the demographics are changing. We're finding that in marketing and the marketability of new space, office space, retail space, growth space in downtowns across the country is younger people are not driving. They don't want a car. They're changing. There's also a long-term demographic that's going to change with self-driving cars. We've seen the demographics change of we need to bring people here, but we're seeing the market change as you see the internet taking away retail trips. So a site like this is good because it's bringing an activity that's not necessarily sales related, it's destination related. We also know that many people are not they can't depend on a car anymore. Elderly folks, my mom, she can't drive anymore. She needs other options to get downtown. And so TDM is a good way to, again, expand opportunities for people to come in different modes. And then finally, I'll end on why you want to do transportation demand management, is we've looked around the country, and the literature will tell you that those cities that are more multimodal are more vibrant. They're more walkable, they're more connected, and they're more affordable. And so if we can expand the universe of trips in Oregon City, we're going to improve the economic environment and the livable environment of Oregon City as well. And that's demonstrated in other cities around the country. I'm going to jump right in because we want to get into questions with you. As I said, we've had 2 sounding boards now, or 2 community summits. And we've played some games, and it's been fun. And we've had a lot of people attend. But at the end of the day, we asked people to tell us what they would do if they were the transportation or the parking czars in the downtown, focused on this site. How do we make this site better? And what we found are the top 7 strategies. And we're working in the larger plan with scores of strategies that we as professionals have seen and what we've heard from the community. And these are in no particular order yet. But more and better wayfinding. That was a very strong strategy. Is people said it's difficult now to know how to use the system in Oregon City. We need to improve on that, particularly if we put this new destination in town. Increased communications of all the options, everything from web pages to apps that complements the wayfinding system, working with businesses to communicate differently about how to come to Oregon City. Extend the existing transit system and frequencies to the site. Everybody saw the existing transit center where it's located, and then you coordinate that with where the new site is located. And there's not a great connection yet in terms of making sure that the bus service extends through the downtown to the site, and there's a real nice landing place on the site for that bus service. But it's an opportunity as well because the transit's already here. Another thing that came out specifically in terms of access is we don't want people to be one-stop visitors or one-stop shoppers. We want to use this opportunity to coordinate with the Downtown Association and others in the community that visitors to the site complement downtown and downtown complements visitors to the site. And it should be a synergistic effect. Go to the Riverwalk, go to the site, come downtown. Vice versa. You're downtown, why not take a walk along the Riverwalk? And so that was a key. So connectivity is going to be important. Pedestrian ways, bicycle ways, bike share. Think about all the ways that we can connect the site. Once we land them here, we want them to be able to access the site. That involves improving the pedestrian and the bike environment as well as the parking environment. Very, very high on the list of concerns is protecting the neighborhoods, the adjacent neighborhoods. On July 6th, we're going to go visit with the folks up on the bluff. But spillover is a big issue. It was a big issue here in 2008 when we came and helped you with your parking plan, and it continues to be a big issue, and we need to resolve that. And I think connectivity is a way to do it. And then everybody agrees that new parking supply is in the future. No one's discounting that, but there's options: on-site parking, downtown parking, linked parking, shared parking, and or remote parking. There's all different ways to say, in the future, how do we add capacity to the parking supply, and where's the most effective place to put it? And it must be linked and multi-purpose. I jumped, those are the strategies, but when we ask folks to come up with the strategies, we ask them to put it through the filter of what our approach with this plan will be, and we call it the inside-outside approach. When we put plans together for communities, we always use this kind of analogy, the inside-outside approach. The inside approach is to maximize the existing infrastructure that you already have. You know, it's the low-hanging fruit. Everything from your existing transit system, existing bike systems if you have, your existing sidewalk and pedestrian systems, signage and information systems that you can put in place now that are low cost. So the inside approach is really trying to take what are the opportunities you currently have that you could leverage. Because we know that the larger infrastructure solutions, which I'll talk to you in a moment, what we call the outside strategy, are more expensive and more time consuming in our ability to deliver them. So we need to connect the inside destinations. We need to leverage what we have. We need to take a hard look at how we can improve the systems we have, and then create incentive programs around that. The outside strategy is major capital systems. One of the biggest things that we heard from the stakeholder groups is everybody would love to have light rail here, or at least the folks that we were talking to. That's a major capital program. That's an outside strategy. It takes time. So things like new transit, external bike or walk connections, you should be sure that if your bike system in downtown now, you should have storage facilities. You should have planned lanes that take you through the downtown. Then you need to work on, now how are we going to connect that to everywhere else? That's more of a major system. External bikeways, external shuttle systems, circulator systems, and external parking supplies. Are there parking supplies? A few people brought up West Lynn and the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center as things that could be linked to parking supply through a shuttle system or a circulator system. We're going to look at all of those, but again, that's our inside-outside strategy. And I think when you saw the 7 top strategies, it was really nice to see that people were thinking through that filter. What's the quickest way to jumpstart? What can we get started on now? And then what are the things that we need to plan for? All of these strategies are going to be finalized into the plan into near, mid, and long-term strategies. But what we don't want to do is directly link them to specific land uses, but to opportunity, to growth, and responsiveness. Think of them as the near-term strategies as a suite of opportunities that you can launch as soon as as the opportunity comes up. The long-term strategies are going to be much more difficult, and we're going to require more funding and more resources over time. Our next steps, and then we'll turn it over to questions for you. That was a quick summary of everything we've been doing. Did you want to go through this? We haven't.
Sure. We have some open house hours with Rick. So we've been setting up meetings with stakeholders. Our last of our 3 summit meetings is July 26th here. We also have on our web page, on the project page, which I'm not going to give you the URL, but if you just actually type in parking under search on the Willamette Falls project page, it'll show up. And what's nice is we have all of the meeting information, all of the PowerPoints, the downtown parking study update that happened last summer, that information, as well as we actually have a new survey on the website right now, a form. So if you want to hear more information and track where we are, you can go to the project page on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project site.
With that, we would take your questions.
Start down here. Bob, you mentioned where parkings are. I'll put on my parking czar hat.
I like it.
OHSU several years ago thought outside the box. People didn't think it was going to work, and it was a gamble. Roll the dice. But the result of it was the waterfront down below and the OHSU medical facilities down there was connected by a tram. Wouldn't it be exciting to have a tram traverse that river from West Lynn to Oregon City and back? Take advantage of all that property over there for off-street parking. That in and of itself would be an attraction to me.
I think the best way to I think it's a great idea. I think the best way to respond to that, though, is within the context of an outside strategy and also the theme of connectivity. So we know that the conversation with the community that connectivity to West Lynn, connectivity to other areas is a way to do it. You could do that by a tram, you could do that by circulators and shuttles. So that idea is certainly not unreasonable, but it would be that cost situation. I have to joke a little bit because a less technical version of what you said was the zip line comment that came from two of our work.
We could afford
groups.
that.
But yeah, I think it falls within that category. But outside strategy with
the one that we
connectivity.
designed at the planning commission level only made it halfway across the river.
That was funding. That was
Was that funny?
yeah.
We ran out of rope in a basket, right?
All right, good.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
that's
I really,
think
I'm
out
serious.
outside the box.
Think of the economic effect that would have on both sides of the river. And I know it would be expensive, but look what it did at OHSU. It reinvented that hospital and research center on the hill to the river.
And they get
I mean, it was-
$25 a pop for each passenger.
So I'm going to give a little plug for Westland. They're actually working on their Westland waterfront study, and I can't. If you want to Google that on Westland, they're kind of taking a second look at the Arch Bridge plan that they did 2 years ago, and working with Westland Paper and some of the and PGE and the property owners along the waterfront. And you know, that's just like Blue Heron. That's a working paper mill that actually doesn't own any land on the island, which is owned by PGE, but kind of near the police station in Westland, they have that parking lot. And you know, short term, there's not a lot of options because that's their working parking lot. But you know, they are looking at long term, and they are the city of Westland is, and we are coordinating and making sure that our plans and their plans don't contradict each other and that they support each other.
Right, Damon?
I'm going to be the Neanderthal. This all sounds really wonderful. Where's the parking structure going to go?
Well, again, it's difficult to say where on the site a parking structure would go, not knowing what the final development pattern is. So our plan would probably call for an interim step, which is identify an appropriate site within the site, a pad within the site, where parking could begin, possibly in the beginning with at a surface lot. I think as the difficulty of a parking garage on the site now is and this is my own opinion, we might be prejudging what's going to happen. But so the way we've planned it, again, inside, outside, near-term possibility, and also setting up the future, it would be some interim site if it was on the development site itself. That way, it provides near-term access for those who would drive to the site, but it doesn't tie our hands on a parking garage and the design elements of the site that would be necessary for a private development.
Okay, so you didn't say no.
No.
No, I think I would go back to the 7 strategies, Commissioner, because I think, as I said, everybody said, you know, in that universe of trips, parking is an important element. And so we didn't want to downplay that. But yeah, garage on that site now is a really hard question to answer because we'd almost lock ourselves in.
Yeah.
One, I think this is great work. I know it's on your radar, but I want to acknowledge that this sounds like an excellent use for a TMA. We have a couple great examples from around the region where we could draw inspiration from, but they have been excellent at managing TDM plans and working with employers to do so, and as well as attracting new funds.
TMA?
Transportation Management Association. Also, I want to acknowledge, and I'm sure it's on your radar, but proactively thinking about car share, particularly A to B car share like Car2Go and Reach Now, and whatever's going to be next. I'm imagining that could have a role here, as well as accommodating TNC drivers, because that is significantly affecting traffic in places like this. And even if it's just a dwell spot so that they can pick up and drop off, that could help ameliorate some traffic.
That's a really good point, duly noted. Also, I think I have to disclose I'm a former TMA director. I founded and established
Not surprised.
Go Lloyd and Lloyd District, and worked with Renata a lot on that. But yeah, I think, as we see this plan folding out, a TMA could be a midterm strategy, because what you need is that density of employers who want to participate. But I do believe you have a catalytic site like that, and to be able to coordinate your TDM not as single strategies, but as a package of strategies through a single organization is a really powerful concept. And so it will definitely be in the plan.
Great.
Thank you.
I would hope that as you begin making more plans, other than the visioning at this point, but working with the tourism plan, the city's tourism plan that's about to happen here, and so that as they begin to develop strategies for incorporating all these different sites and recreation for tourists, that this could be all a part of that. All of that connectivity could even get them to where they need to go tourism-wise.
It's a great idea. The best example of that right now, in a much smaller way, is Explore Washington Park up in Washington Park. It's a TMA coordinating 7 event venues. And so now they're working towards a single coordinated message on those multiple sites on how to get to those sites. So, Commissioner, that's a great idea, but it would need to be bigger, because this is bigger than just Washington Park, but it's a great idea.
Maybe do you want to talk a little bit about your initial recommendation about an implementation group?
Right. One of the things that, as we looked at all of the ideas that are on the table and that we're exploring, is that what's probably going to be needed, and it could be nascent to a TMA, is, for lack of a better term now, a Parking and Transportation Demand Management Advisory Committee working with the city. The question on the table still is, who's going to be responsible for implementing, bird dogging, shepherding, and reporting on progress? It doesn't have to be, it could be in the beginning 2 to 3 times a year. But back to, is it Henkin?
Right.
Commissioner Henkin's question, that's where a TMA could really come into play. Is someone's picking up the plan, an entity, they're constantly looking at it and saying, where are we? Where are we in time? What are our opportunities? Where are our partnerships? And are we accomplishing forward progress? So that's something that we know in a lot of cities when we've done parking management plans. We do the plan and it goes on a shelf, because, and not for lack of effort, but there might be 7 or 8 different divisions or entities within a city that all have a piece of it, but no one's totally responsible for it. So that's something we're looking at. It's like a coordinating committee, but definitely down the road, that would be certainly a role a TMA could play, which is sort of who's responsible, the single point of contact, and continually communicating with you and with City Council and with partners downtown and within the region to make the plan happen.
Just what you said there, this traffic is going to be generated all over the metropolitan area and internationally, nationally and internationally. I find it kind of curious to even think that a small city like Oregon City would be able to afford managing all of that traffic that was generated outside of its jurisdiction. And something like that would have to, seem to me, require an economy of scale like Metro to manage. I mean, we can't be expected to be overwhelmed by this traffic, and we will initially until we learn how to deal with it. And the same thing financially. I mean, that's going to impact the budget of a small community like this, let alone the police force, just to police the increased population on a weekend. You know. Then there was one other thing. during the course of construction of this Riverwalk, you're going to have a lot of trucks pulling in and out of there, construction trucks, hauling away debris and things of that way. And it's going to impact public safety for anywhere along the McLaughlin and other streets. Have you given any consideration to public safety and pedestrian safety?
Within the overall plan, yes, but in terms of construction mitigation, no. I always hate to say that that's not in our scope, but in terms of overall improving pedestrian safety, bicycle safety within the context of an ongoing plan that would be implemented as the Riverwalk evolves and the site evolves, yes. Not specifically the construction mitigation.
Because they're going to be pulling out onto McLaughlin and going somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be part. Of probably the negotiations with the development, that they've got a they've got a mitigation plan, but it's unfortunately not a part of our plan. Except the longer term issue of good pedestrian environment, good safety, comfort.
Mr. Johnson.
One thing along the line of Bob's original tram, you're bringing them in by air, kind of not from other countries, but across the river. I'm sure you've heard comments or had questions on what can we do to bring customers up the river, down the river from Portland, which also kind of addresses Bob's question of, can we afford all this parking, let Portland build the parking or already have parking, but have a trip coming down the river to the Riverwalk or to some port here in Oregon City?
One of the, if I understand your question, Commissioner, one of the ideas that was in a couple of the groups that got a couple of hits was a water taxi. That was seen more as the Riverwalk and the site itself evolves, that a private entity would see an opportunity. It wasn't necessarily seen as, okay, now the city's got to, as to your point, Commissioner Mahoney, that we've got to come up with all this money. But I think things like that, a river taxi, in the long term, if we could ever improve the bus service frequency to Oregon City and then to the site, long term, 20 years from now, light rail, you are literally using someone else's parking. That's what remote parking is all about. So none of that is off the table. I think the hard part in the context of this plan would be what would be the synergistic events that would launch it. But I think things like water taxi is certainly a private opportunity. Things like light rail are a long-term regional planning opportunity. But I certainly agree that when we can use other parking rather than build it, and it's efficient and quick and convenient, that we should pursue that first. That's like the inside strategy. And that's kind of like your point on the first parking. Let's get a net increase in our supply going, but let's also know that we need to work with the downtown and we need to work with the site itself so that we're not creating something that we're going to regret from a design point of view. I hope that answered your question.
Okay.
I just have one more. It just looks like the parking needs are going to evolve as the project grows and changes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm hoping that you guys can keep in mind when you do your plan that the plan can grow and change. Because I think that's one of the other reasons why plans end up on the shelf is that they plan for a certain element of time or a certain segment of time with the project's usefulness, and then all of a sudden the project evolves into something else that has different needs that the plan doesn't address. And I know that's probably an impossible thing to ask, but keep it in mind, or at least keep the plan flexible enough so that changes can be made.
Right, and I want to emphasize, because we totally agree, I want to emphasize that that's why we're doing the near, mid, and long term as opposed to triggers. And we'll have metrics like, if the parking is 85% occupied, you need to start, that's a constraint. But the near-term strategies are a suite of strategies. The mid-term strategies are a suite of strategies. I think the long-term issue of coordination, again, I think you really hit the nail on the head, is then that coordinating body, whatever it is, can then avail themselves of those opportunities within those suites as the development evolves. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, I think we've covered it. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, staff, for all your work on this. It's been great. Communications, City Manager?
I don't have any updates at this point.
Okay. Then we are going to adjourn. Thank you, Planning Commission members, for joining us tonight. And we should do this more often.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. And we're going to adjourn to our next meeting here.
Well, that was yes on the tram?